And we'll be live very shortly. So, good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee of Colchester Borough Council. And the meeting is due to start at 10 a.m. this morning, but we're having some technical difficulties, and these are being resolved and will be up and running as soon as possible. So in the meantime, the meeting will be considered to be adjourned and we'll be with you again as soon as we can be. Thank you.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Tim. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Lovely. Right. Right, Chairman, I think we're ready to go.
Yeah. So good morning again, everybody, and welcome back to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee of Colchester Borough Council. The first item of business on the agenda is to appoint a chair for this meeting. Councillors, can I have a nomination, please?
Nominate Councillor Harris.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay, are there any other nominations?
No.
Okay, councillors, we'll take a quick vote on this, please. I'll call your name in order. Just please indicate whether or not you approve the nomination. Councillor Harris.
Yes.
You're happy. Councillor Oxford.
Yes.
Councillor Young.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, you're duly elected the chair of this meeting, and I hand proceedings over to you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you very much for that. And hello to all. Good morning and welcome to this online meeting on the Tuesday, the 9th of March 2021. I'm Councillor Dave Harris and I'm the Councillor for the Beerchurch Ward, and I will be chairing this meeting this morning. Now, I've got to say that this meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom over the internet on the Council's YouTube channel and will be available to watch afterwards. To begin with, there are a few matters of housekeeping. With the exception of the Democratic Services officers advising us, would participants all please mute their microphones unless they are invited to speak. I will ask for the business to be presented and we will then be proceeded in accordance with the hearings procedure guidance, which will ensure that anyone who wishes to has ample opportunity to address this committee. To summarise the procedure, I will invite the licensing officer to present the report and then invite Essex Police as the applicant to present their case. The premises licence holder may also present their case, and there will be opportunity for any clarifying questions from the committee or any other party. At this stage, I will ask the Democratic Services Officer to make clear that the premises licence holder has had invites to this meeting and has ample opportunity to attend.
Yes, Chair. The premises licence holder has received the statutory notice of hearing, has also received copies of the full agenda pack and an invitation to this meeting, and they have indicated to the licensing officers that they do not intend to attend the meeting or be represented here. The meeting is open, should they wish to join, but that's the current position.
Okay. And to be clear then, as Chairman, as part of the Constitution, we are allowed to present and proceed with the case with Councillor Tim Young and Councillor Beverley Oxford and myself making the decision. So we may have a break at 11:30, subject to the progress of the business. Item 3 on the agenda is substitutions. There are no members, I understand, that are substituted here. Item 4, could I invite councillors present to declare any interest for any of the items that are on the agenda this morning? And councillors must publicly announce the item number, whether the interest is pecuniary or not, or non-pecuniary. I have none. Okay. Item 5, review of the premises licence, the Anchor Tiptree. And I invite John Ruder to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, an application to review the premises licence has been received from the police in relation to the Anchor Public House in Tiptree. The review has been brought due to the objective of crime and disorder being undermined. The licensing committee are here to determine the application made by the police. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruder. Could I then invite the police to present the case, please?
Okay. Good morning, Chair, members of the subcommittee and all those attending. My name is Alan Beckett and I'm the Police Licensing Officer for Colchester. May I firstly check that the subcommittee, check that the subcommittee that you've had the opportunity to look at the police submission regarding the Anchor as well as the CCTV images from the body-worn video. Firstly, can I start by apologising for the size of the submission? However, I thought when preparing it that the subcommittee needed to have as full a picture as possible about the uncovered issues and alleged breaches of both the law and the licensing objectives at the Anchor Public House. You will also have noticed that the venue and management at that time have been offered support and guidance, and that's particularly from the council team. Despite this, and having time during government-enforced lockdowns to address issues, the venue has failed to comply with the government regulations as well as the licensing objectives. And I would draw your attention again to Appendix Z, which sets these out. It is therefore the police contention that the crime and disorder licensing objective has been compromised, and indeed it could be argued that breaches of the coronavirus regulations have impacted on the public safety licensing objective. And this at a time when other venues were doing their best to trade safely and within the rules. It is for that reason I would request the subcommittee to revoke the premises licence for the reason stated in the submission. So thank you for listening, and if subcommittee have any questions, I will try to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beckett. Anybody else presenting?
It's just me, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Young, did you have any questions?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I mean, it was remarkable reviewing the evidence and looking at the video from the body-worn cameras. I guess the only thing that I would ask Alan for the police is that, I know guidelines and regulation and what was law and what was guidance was ever changing, ever evolving at the time, but it did seem in some of the footage that even the police officers didn't know what was guidance and what was law. I mean, what was going on is pretty evident from what we've seen, but is that a fair point? And are officers now more aware of what the law is and what is guidance and stuff like that? Because I think that was confusing the premises license holder when what was happening, was happening. So that's my only query really with what the police evidence is, which is very clear and very stark, but I guess we're all confused. And is it fair to say that officers were too?
Councillor Young, I think that is probably a fair point. I know myself and my colleagues from the council enforcement team we're constantly trying to grapple with that, what you say, what was guidance and what was actually regulation. Some of the stuff that you've seen on the CCTV with the tables not being 2 meters apart, I mean, that was fairly clear. It'd been well advertised on the TV. I mean, people have had every opportunity to comply. And as I made in my sort of statement, there's been a load of venues in the Colchester area, some of which you might expect perhaps might push the boundaries a little bit. But in fairness to them, they've done a pretty sterling job in difficult circumstances. Hopefully, when the next set of regulations comes out, it will be in good time and hopefully be clearer to everybody. But yeah, I do take your point. There was some confusion all round, police and sort of enforcement as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, can I just follow up, Chair?
Yes.
Dave? Yeah. I just wondered, Alan, how regular are the briefings that police officers are getting about coronavirus and COVID regulations? Is it daily? Is it weekly? What sort of regime, what sort of regime is in place to make sure officers are up to date?
At the moment, Chair, it's coming out as weekly. Obviously, we are looking at the venues being allowed to reopen under the current government roadmap on the 12th of April. As far as I'm aware, the regulations for that have not been published yet, but I suspect that once they are, then that will be included in the briefing pack to officers that goes out weekly. That's sort of an intranet-based item or online, for want of a better term.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Chair. That's all the questions I've got for Alan.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tim Young. John Ruder, I see you got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to clarify in helping Councillor Young, all businesses were written to every time there was a change by the local authority with what they were and were not allowed to do. And that was sent on a regular every time the law changed. Also, I apologise, I need to refer back to the report. In the report, it mentions at the start that there's a transfer that says the 4th. It's actually official on the 8th due to documentation not being received. So the official date in the report should say the 8th, not the 4th. I do apologise for that mistake.
Noted, thank you very much. Councillor Beverly Alsford, any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. My questions were very much similar to Councillor Young's. The other question I have is, I'm looking through the agenda and the pack and everything. I can't find who it was that actually did this risk assessment that he kept saying it's not fair. I couldn't do my risk assessment, etc. who actually did it? Because there's no name of a company he used. Did he just do it himself, or do we know?
If I may, Councillor Oxford, Appendix N, apologies for everyone who have to flick through, but there's an email from Miss Kate Pearsall of the council where she's actually asked where the risk assessment is, and in his response, he alludes to someone else doing it. Who that person actually is, I don't know. I know when I met him, he referred to someone else who I think worked in Tiptree and it does health and safety for a scaffolding firm or something like that. That was my recollection of the conversation.
Oh, right. So could he have actually filled in his own risk assessment and just used it as a tick box exercise by saying yes to everything? Because there was email traffic backwards and forwards saying, can you clarify this on your risk assessment, etc., which didn't actually happen for quite a while. So could he have actually done it himself? And is there any way that we can actually check to make sure when we ask for a risk assessment, it's done by somebody who knows what they're doing, or is that up to somebody else?
When the guidance came out at that time, I don't believe that there was ever stated that it had to be someone who was, if you like, a health and safety professional to do it. And I visited a number of venues who sort of, if you like, had a bit of a stab at it, some more successful than others. And I gave my sort of point of view where I could, accepting that I'm not a health and safety professional. But a lot of the venues in the town did actually produce them to a lesser or greater quality. So in answer to your question, he could well have done it himself. For whatever reason, he chose not to and to get someone else to do it. And that was evident when he was asked to produce it when the officers visited in early August, that he hadn't really got a clue.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Ruder wishes to reply as well.
Thank you, Chair. Just to help Mr. Beckett, basically the obligation is under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 in relation to carrying out full risk assessments of your business. Now, depending on whether you have 5 or more people, depends on whether it actually has to be written down. So if you have less than 5 people employed, you don't have to have a written risk assessment in place. You just have to know under due diligence how to explain it to an inspecting officer. That being said, under the COVID, the guidance was very clear that because we were in this situation, you should have a written risk assessment and it should detail all your social distancing measures and what measures you have in place to deal with it. And again, as Mr. Beckett rightly pointed out, where people wanted our assistance, being the inspectors of health and safety, we did advise accordingly. However, the anchor did not ask for our advice.
Are you satisfied, Beverly?
Yes, lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions. Some, Mr. Beckett, will be for you, but some may well be answered by the licensing department. Across Colchester, I'm trying to measure the risk assessment pro forma that this establishment did. Did other establishments appear slow to uptake on the risk assessment process, or was this a very, very extreme exception?
From my own perspective, Chair, I think this is a rare exception. As I said earlier, a lot of venues did sort of try and cobble something together under sort of difficult circumstances, and where we were able to provide a bit of assistance and guidance. And I think most of the venues that I had contact with were very much ahead of the game, as it were, in actually getting them done ready so that they could open on the 4th of July.
Thank you. My next question is on the failure to display a premises license, which seemed to me a very fundamental slip up. How often does that happen, please?
When the police conduct what we call Benison checks, and they're basically just a go in and are by and large a tick box exercise, that is one of the questions that the officers or myself will ask: where's your premises license? Is it displayed? Can I see it? To be fair, it's not unique that the anchor couldn't display it. and hence why the officers probably decided that a verbal warning was an appropriate response. That being said, the majority of the premises that we visit do have one reasonably readily available and that we're able to look at, or it's publicly displayed as it should be.
Thank you. My next question is, you referred in your statement that, that under the 2003 Act, that the public could well have been and probably were at risk because of the failings there. On the 18th of December, did any customers seem to have face masks with them, even though I could see on the video that they weren't wearing them? Were signs in place to say, whilst you are standing up, you must wear a mask?
I'm not. I've got to be honest, Chair. I don't know the answer to that question, and it's not something I've covered. But I mean, it was fundamental in the legislation or the regulations at that time. The government had sort of caught up a bit and made it under the face covering regulations that it was quite clear what the obligations were, and it should have been clear to both the customers and the DPS and premises licence holder at the time.
Thank you very much. My last question is about on page 33 of the document. There's a tick box that says insufficient CCTV. Is that was just a question really? What was lacking in the CCTV? Was it the wrong quality, or was it not all areas being covered by the cameras?
Sorry, is that in relation to the police visit?
Yes. Yes.
I suspect that was probably, although they haven't gone into detail, he may have had trouble logging on, because you'll have seen, presumably when the officers got there, he had several attempts to try and get into, and it took him a few goes. Admittedly, he may well have been under a bit of pressure with having a couple of officers breathing down his neck, but it was quite clear that he wasn't as familiar with it as perhaps he should have been.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I've got no other questions. Any final questions, Tim or Beverly? Councillor Young?
Yeah, just on both occasions, Alan, the officers were saying that if you don't comply with this, we will hit you with a £10,000 fine, which I know is an ultimate that they could have made. What is the procedure? Because they then, I will speak to my superintendent or whoever, and we'll hit you with a £10,000 fine. What is the procedure, or were they just saying that to up the ante?
I suspect that may have been part of it, Councillor Young. However, there is facility to do it, and from recollection, I think they have to create what we call an Athena record. That's a police computer system, and then people will look at the evidence, the strength of the evidence, and decide whether it's worth actually issuing a £10,000 fine. I think perhaps with the knowledge, the fact that we were going to be here today, obviously they didn't know the date then, they may have decided that perhaps that might have been considered sort of two bites of the cherry, and that perhaps the review was the way to go, although I'm sure you'll all appreciate that I wasn't privy to those conversations.
But that would have to have been signed off by a senior officer. The officers on the night couldn't have just immediately slapped that on him.
No, they couldn't have done it themselves off their own back. There's a process to go through to make sure that it's fair, because as was alluded to earlier, there was confusions between guidance and regulations, and I'm sure we've all seen the stories of people being given tickets when all they've done is breached guidance. So I think for that reason, Essex Police, like probably a lot of other forces, decided to have that little sort of buffer in the middle, just so that it could be double checked that we were doing the right thing. But like I said, Councillor Young, I wasn't involved in those discussions.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Any other final questions, Beverly? Councillor Oxford?
No, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Young has asked all the ones I wanted to ask.
That's good. Thank you. Well, that's the end of the questions. There's no query at all from the premises licence here, so we go straight to the closing statements, Mr. Beckett, and the committee has got 5 options here available to decide in private, obviously, and you're asking for the revoke. Could you, in your closing statement, go through the other options and make sure that which one you're advocating and why?
As I pointed out in my my initial submission, Chair, when I looked at this, there are a number of options. Removing the DPS is one option, but at that time he was also the premises license holder, so that was in effect discounted because he still could have had sort of like control of the venue. I think a cut in the hours or the licensable activities wouldn't necessarily have achieved the desired result. I appreciate that a suspension is an option, but when we consider that sort of from March last year to this point, we've had a number of government enforced closures, so suspensions by virtue of another mechanism. And on each occasion, he has continued to breach the regulations as they've been reintroduced. So from that point of view, Chair, I would ask that, in my view, and I appreciate it's the most serious outcome, that the premises licence is revoked for all the reasons I've laid out in my initial submission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beckett. That's the end of this session. We have to go into a separate meeting and discuss this as decision makers, and then come back to this meeting when we made the decision.
Yes, Chair. Would you mind just moving that we go into the public are excluded, and once the councillors are agreed on that, we will retire.
Okay. So in accordance with section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 72, to exclude the public, including the press, from the meeting, so that any items containing exempt information, for example, confidential or personal, financial or legal, in part B of this agenda, can be cited or excluded, please.
Thank you. Now, councillors, if we leave this meeting, please, and rejoin the private meeting that's set up. To those people who are remaining in this Zoom meeting, I would remind you the broadcast will continue, and therefore please keep your microphones muted until the subcommittee returns. Thank you.
Thank you. A repeat good morning to you all. We're going to restart the meeting. Please, the YouTube is still running. So for everybody present, the following deliberations, the licensing subcommittee has reached the decision to revoke the premises license held by Miss Kay Murphy in relation to the Anchor Public House Tiptree. In reaching its decision, the subcommittee examined all the documents submitted, including relevant body-worn camera footage provided by Essex Police, and considered all the representations made at the hearing. The subcommittee was particularly concerned by the offences that had been committed under coronavirus regulations as set out in the evidence provided by Essex Police, and considered that in addition to undermining the Prevention of Crime and Disorder licensing objective set out by the Licensing Act 2003, members of the public attending the premises had also been placed in danger, undermining public safety licensing objectives. Although consideration was given to the other options available to the subcommittee, including removal of the designated premises supervisor and suspension of the license for a period of time, the subcommittee did not feel that any other option other than revocation of the premises license was appropriate to address the serious breaches of regulations that occurred. The subcommittee noted that the premises license holder had stated that it was not their intention to attend or be represented at the hearing, despite being invited to do so. And this lack of engagement gave the subcommittee no confidence that the premises would be run in accordance with the regulations in the future. Thank you very much, and I now end the meeting.